Welcome to EVTN News, your source for the latest news in the Catholic world. Now, a lot of the news, I'm actually covering news stories from the last 2 weeks because Brett and I did the reflection on Pope Benedict's his legacy. And so, if you haven't watched it, check it out. Let me know what you think. The last week, the news has basically been like, oh, Pope Francis, you know, he I don't want to say stood up Benedict, but he didn't say nice things about Benedict at his funeral, or like his homily, because it's a Novus Ordo, it's called a homily. His homily wasn't what it should have been, and like, okay, whatever, guys. You can. A lot of people are outraged, and you don't have to just live in your outrage. You can do some nice things on your own. Um, Read a book, watch John the Son of Thunder. um, get off of Twitter. It's a bad place. It's like, oh well, who's the latest Catholic personality that's trying to differentiate themselves from someone else? You know, who's the latest Catholic personality to have a hot take just so that they could get more money from a certain um, branch of Catholics? Like you have the church militant Catholics who basically are constantly angry, and they want to continue to fuel that anger by watching more church militant. Um, you have you have the what's another branch? Oh, Patrick Coffin, the people that thought Benedict was Pope, and now they're basically Novus Ordo Sedevacantists. That's kind of sad. Actually, very sad. Anyway, the people that follow John the Son of Thunder are the most educated on YouTube. That's very clear. Uh, pat myself on the back, but pat you guys on the back too. You guys are great. It's always fun to do these videos, and I, I've I thought about what's going to happen after this channel, and hopefully that won't be for a while. So anyway, let's get started. German CDF. German CDF appointment. Several cardinals. This is coming from Gloria TV, and I don't know about this. So at one point there, in December, there was a rumor that there would be a German bishop who is supportive of the ideals of the synodal way. There was a German bishop that was going to be appointed as the head of the CDF. Several cardinals organized a consistent opposition against the appointment of Hildesheim Bishop Heiner Wilmer of Germany as the prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. It was reported on a German Catholic website. The appointment was planned for Advent, but did not take place. The former prefect of the congregation, Cardinal Mueller, played a decisive role. With a numerically strong support in the College of Cardinals, he was able to persuade Francis to refrain from the appointment. I actually find this hard to believe. Cardinal Mueller was fired from his job early on in the pontificate of Francis. He's been critical of Pope Francis, and so why would Francis listen to his opinion? Francis doesn't listen to his critics. He doesn't even talk to them. So I find this hard to believe. There was the rumor that this bishop would be appointed, but I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a rumor. That's the thing. Right now there's a lot of speculation, and I actually believe some of it. We'll get into that in a little bit. In India, a violent clash erupted at St. Mary's Cathedral Basilica in Kochi, India, between supporters of presiding Mass facing the people, which is a liturgical abuse, and the proponents of a unified Mass, allegedly backed by the Vatican, where at least parts are celebrated facing God. The presiders camped on Saturday inside the church when the celebrators entered the church. Father Antoni Putavelli, anyway, you can read the article if you want. The cathedral administrator attempted to celebrate while protesting priests presided on the same altar, but turning away from God. I think Gloria TV has a video. I think so. Check the link in the description. Police refrained from interfering as the clash happened in the basilica. The turmoil ended with expletives hurled inside the church. The altar was cleared and finally overturned. Reportedly, the blood of Christ was spilled. The clash resulted in injuries to nearly a dozen priests. Ooh. I mean, I've heard stories about heretics being carried out of the church. But in this case, the modernists are protesting because they want the priest facing them. I could never imagine that would happen in the Novus Ordo rite. Well, now apparently Pope Francis supports the traditional practices of the Syro-Malabars, but not of the Roman rite, which is so odd. It makes no sense. It really doesn't. There's a different Father Martin. You're familiar with Father James Martin, but there's a Father Oscar Martin, a priest of the diocese in Ciudad Real, Spain, and he has been publicly harassed for preaching the Catholic doctrine on LMNOP, explaining in a homily that the lack of parental affection in childhood is the origin of LMNOP attraction in many cases. The priest celebrated Mass December 16th in the parish of Santa Maria la Mayor in his hometown to commemorate the second day of the Triduum for Our Lady of Hope. In the homily, he began by discussing the Virgin expectantly waiting during her pregnancy with Jesus and how the desires of the heart are never unknown to God. And speaking of longings, he explained that there are times when a person is unaware of their origin. From there, he went on to address the issues of those who feel LMNOP attraction. Martin explained that in many cases, this comes from a lack that was not satisfied at the beginning of his life in the first days, months of his life. Ooh, burn. The priest, he said many other things. The priest's words were referenced in the local media in such a way that a public controversy was created. This led to the condemnation of organizations such as the Comisiones Obreras Union and the call to carry out an act of harassment against the priest. So there you go. He's being harassed for preaching the Catholic faith. Another, oh yeah, so we mentioned this last week, but I'll just repeat it very shortly, very quickly. Cardinal Mueller has paid tribute to the late Pope Benedict XVI, describing him as a great thinker and a true doctor of the Church for today. Canonization. Canonization's right around the corner. Ooh. I'd like to bring back the traditional canonization process and wait for at least 50 years to even consider it. A few months ago, from his private place of retirement at the Mater Ecclesiae Monastery in the Vatican, Pope Benedict sent a private letter of encouragement to the superior of the FSSP following the motu proprio Traditionis Custodes. That's another item that we talked about. What does it mean? What does it say? And why didn't he say anything publicly? That's a good question. Cardinal Zen reportedly was granted leave by the Chinese authorities to travel to Rome for Pope Benedict's funeral. So, he also, for whatever reason, Pope Francis decided to meet with Cardinal Zen privately on Friday after attending Benedict's funeral. So Cardinal Zen said he said, "It was wonderful. He was so very warm." He told this to America Magazine. So there's a lot of questions here. Why is Cardinal Zen giving an interview to the heretical America Magazine? Does he know that at one point they supported communism? It was wonderful. He was so very warm. Really, did they turn up the heat? Is that why he was warm? What about when he stood you up? Was he very warm? Did he tell you that he supported your efforts, Cardinal Zen? Or did he tell you that he supported communism, because that's what he does with the Vatican Chinese deal. Did he tell you that he was happy with the Chinese government selecting bishops, communist bishops? Or did he tell you what you wanted to hear, like he always does? And Cardinal Zen has been granted leave. Don't you think he would seek asylum? Because it's such a it's a place that Hong Kong is now under Chinese control and it persecutes Christians. Wouldn't that have been a good idea? Cardinal Zen just refuses to get back on a plane. There's plenty of people who would take him. Lots of questions. Seems like a man who's given up. All right, the abbot of the Benedictine Thule Abbey in Germany forbade Father Joachim Wernersbach from performing pastoral activities in the area surrounding the abbey, and announced that the abbey will commission an ecclesiastical investigation with an analysis of sermon, text, and intercessory prayers. In his Christmas Eve sermon, which was uploaded on YouTube but later removed, Wernersbach talked about abortion, gender ideology, the traditional family, and the synodal way from a faithful Catholic perspective. So he was suspended by his superiors, and there will be an ecclesiastical investigation for him opposing the synodal way. That's the thing. The Catholic faith does not exist in Germany amongst many of the bishops. And as a trickle-down effect, it doesn't exist amongst many of the priests. We are in a state of emergency. I mean, you should know that by now. If you've been watching this channel, you do know that by now. We're in a state of emergency. You can't go to your diocese, especially in Germany. You can't go to your diocese if you want the Catholic faith. You just can't. And these priests, I don't know, how many of them have the Catholic faith in Germany? How many of them are suffering under terrible bishops? Soon after the funeral of Pope Benedict XVI, a video began circulating online which appeared to show a man being denied Holy Communion at the Mass as he knelt before a priest distributing the Eucharist and he attempted to receive it on the tongue. The video is apparently an excerpt from Vatican Media's own broadcast of the funeral, and of course the video is without sound or context. Any possible extenuating circumstances or additional information is not available to those who view it. So, yeah, that's just that's what it is. But it looks bad. A guy kneeling to receive communion on the tongue and being denied by a priest. I don't know. Was there additional context? Usually you can see that. Usually in those situations, there's not really context. It's just the priest doesn't want to give communion on the tongue, which is I don't know, abuse, heresy. I don't know, sacrilege. All right, and I don't know, did I talk about this? I may have talked about this in a previous video, but Bishop William Callahan, everyone's favorite bishop, right? All the viewers' favorite bishop. Bishop William Callahan of La Crosse, Wisconsin, has strictly banned the traditional Latin Mass at parish churches in his diocese, according to a Wisconsin priest. The Latin Mass is now permitted at only 3 non-parochial locations in the diocese. One's at the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I think that's Cardinal Burke's Shrine. St. Mary's Oratory in Wausau and Cor Jesu Oratory in Boyd. So, LifeSite News, I don't know. I'm not. They cover a lot of good stories, but I'm not a fan of their. What would you call it? Sometimes they do a little bit of a limited report. Like their reporting is a little bit limited. They didn't do a full investigation. So I don't know how many Latin Masses were available in La Crosse, Wisconsin before this ban. So it would be interesting to see if it's like, okay, it came down from like 10 to 3, or maybe there were only 3 and the Latin Masses were just moved. I don't know. So unfortunately, LifeSite doesn't always complete their stories, and that's a complaint of mine. So now the one story that I have. I was talking to people about this, and then it actually happened, like very quickly after I talked to them about it. I said, if you are getting married and you schedule your wedding at a diocesan Latin Mass or the Institute of Christ the King or the FSSP, there's no guarantee that wedding is actually going to happen. It's sad to say, but it's true. Because look, if you were scheduled to have a wedding in the Archdiocese of Chicago and then Supich basically suspended the faculties of the Institute, how would you be able to have a Latin Mass wedding if you scheduled your wedding at the Institute for a day after Cardinal Supich suspended them? Or the day after, would you be permitted? They shut down all public masses. So what happened? Anyway, this guy, his Twitter profile is called DC Rosary Rally for the Latin Mass. I would imagine that this guy is, well, man or woman. I'm not going to assume the gender of an anonymous Twitter account. How dare I, right? Parent Ryan would come and chew me out. But so this guy says, one of the truly beautiful, this is sarcastic, one of the truly beautiful pastoral elements of Traditionis Custodes, being told a few days before your wedding day that actually you can't have a TLM wedding anymore. Here are you new propers, guys. Try to make the best of it. This type of thing really makes me appreciate Vatican II. I admit my allegiance was slipping a bit after all those diocesan TLMs, probably the TLM bans. But having your wedding mass changed to a Novus Ordo on a few days' notice by the bishop really makes you grateful that there was a council that made the church so pastoral. The council was so very welcoming to all and so secure in itself that such petty clericalism as messing with a couple on their wedding day on the point of a liturgy is totally out of the question. The new springtime is here. So that's your options. Have your diocesan Latin Mass wedding changed to a Novus Ordo. I don't know your regional options. The SSPX is an option. And they will drive. You just have to find the venue. And they have faculties from Rome. You can go Byzantine. I wouldn't do Novus Ordo. Even if you do FSSP or Institute, you're still kind of risking a little bit. That's just how it is. Sad to say. A few years ago, anyone could have a Latin Mass wedding and everyone loved it. Now, it's hard. It's difficult. I don't know. I hope none of you have that sad situation. Even, like I said, FSSP and Institute aren't. They're not immune from suspensions. We saw that in the Archdiocese of Chicago. The Institute caved, and bishops around the world saw it. I'm not, happy about it. I'm not excited about it. It's sad. Would you rather get married on the beach? You can always just go back. You can go back to a priest and have him bless your wedding, bless your marriage, or whatever they call it. Really, really, it's true. It's true. You can just have a ceremony and be done with it. It takes, 5-10 minutes? You don't have to have a mass. I might actually, I don't know. If you don't have a Latin Mass, if no one will come, if no priest will show up to say a Latin Mass wedding, you might just be better off doing it with the 5-minute Novus Ordo ceremony. And I never even thought about that until right now. I don't mean to insult anyone here. I don't mean to laugh at other people's, what should I say, other people's misfortune. I shouldn't. It's not funny. Um, you should also consider the Byzantine sacraments. I mean, I know there are other Eastern rites. The Maronites just, I don't know. I've seen the Maronite liturgy. It looks like the Novus Ordo. No thanks. No thank you. I mean, they need to stick to their traditions. I don't know about the other Eastern rites either. But the Byzantines, they're pretty solid. Their prayers are great. You go to the Byzantine Divine Liturgy, and when the priest is chanting the prayers, it's like, wow, these are really, solid language. The language is very similar to that of the Latin Mass in the Byzantine Divine Liturgy. The structure is much different. You won't find, but you'll find that um, the prayers are comparable, not necessarily on the same days, but it just talks about our how we are all sinners, we're in need of God's mercy, and then the deliberate actions, like the priest at the Byzantine rite technically does ad orientem. I mean, that's what you want. All right, let's get to the comments. Leave a comment if you have anything to say. I wonder what changed Francis's mind about finally meeting with Zen. I don't know. Probably some public pressure. Did you see Taylor Marshall's video about a group of cardinals planning to oust Bergoglio? I'll read the article and then maybe comment on it next week. I mean, I feel like that's a lot of nothing. It is what do I want to say? Kind of big news. Big news? I don't know. It's a big claim, I guess I could say. There's not a conservative group that's going to kick him out. There's not. Sorry, guys. They're wimps. What are they going to do? Maybe Cardinal Mueller's going around ordaining priests in the old rite. I don't know. He was the secret cardinal or whoever that he may have been the secret cardinal who ordained Dom Alcuin Reed. What's Cardinal Burke done? Cardinals can go around anywhere and say the Latin Mass. Cardinal Burke could go to Chicago and say the Latin Mass if he wants. Has he done that? Has he said a Latin Mass in the United States, aside from maybe his shrine in Wisconsin? He could have done that. Go to Washington, D.C., go to Chicago. Where else is bad? There's a lot of terrible bishops out there, and they're getting promoted. Go to San Diego. Undermine all these rotten cardinals. I wish it was true, but I don't think nothing will happen either. Yeah, nothing will happen. They're not... Francis will quit when he wants. He'll continue to make people miserable. That's what he's done for 10 years. Sad to say. The church has been under persecution for 10 years. We get what we deserve. Okay, that's all I have for EVTN news. Yeah, we'll see. Have a great new year. I hope that you have a lot of good plans for this year, and hopefully you'll read a lot of good books, good Catholic books. I know that I have some on the list to read. I've been, I got collected works of St. John of the Cross. I'm excited to get into that at some point. I have a lot of other books to read as well. So hopefully you have a great new year. And thank you so much for watching. We are the laity, and we will not be silent.